What would you say if a cop leaned into your window and asked where you were coming from right now? If you answer the wrong way, you can hand the officer evidence they did not have 10 seconds earlier. One casual sentence can turn a simple stop into a criminal case against you. Hit subscribe right now because what I'm about to show you could keep your own words from being used against you later. Like this video now so you can find it fast when a real stop happens. You need to know what is really happening in that moment. The officer is not making small talk. The officer is checking your story, your voice, your timing, and your fear. If your answer sounds off, the stop can grow fast. Now they want to know where you were, who you were with, what you drank, why you look nervous, and whether your story changes. Most people have no idea how fast that spiral starts. Let me show you exactly what to say, when to say it, and why saying less can protect you more. You are about to learn the clean line that shuts down phishing questions, the mistake that makes silence dangerous, the question that tells you whether the stop is over, and the backup rule that protects you if they order you out anyway. This matters because you will feel pressure right away. Your brain wants to be polite. Your mouth wants to fill the silence. You think if you sound friendly, the officer will let you go. But that is how people talk themselves into trouble. You say you came from dinner. Then the officer sees fast food bags and says your story does not match. You say you came from work. Then the officer asks where you work, what time you left, and why your clothes look different. You say you had one drink. Now you just admitted you were drinking before driving. Here's the reality. The question sounds harmless, but it is often a test. It is a fast way to get you talking before you think. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and the pattern is always the same. The more a driver tries to explain, the more new openings appear. The first thing you do is stop answering optional questions and clearly invoke your silence. Listen closely because this is critical. You do not just stare ahead, you do not mumble, you do not say maybe later, you use clear words. Here's exactly what you say. Officer, I'm invoking my right to remain silent and I don't want to answer questions. Word for word, keep your voice calm, keep your hands visible, then stop talking about your day. Why is that line so strong? Because just being quiet is not always enough. In Salinas versus Texas, the Supreme Court said that outside formal custody, a person usually needs to clearly claim the Fifth Amendment instead of simply going silent. Plain English. If you just freeze up, a prosecutor may later argue your silence meant guilt. But if you clearly say you are using your right to stay silent, you make the record cleaner. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. And during a normal roadside stop, Berkemer versus McCarty says officers can ask questions before reading Miranda rights because a traffic stop is usually not the same as full custody. Plain English again. Do not wait for a TV-style warning. Protect yourself before that. Bad way. Most drivers say, I just came from a friend's place. Why? Then the officer hears nerves, smells alcohol, or spots something odd, and the questions multiply. Good way. Smart drivers say, Officer, I'm invoking my right to remain silent, and I don't want to answer questions. Then the officer gets less material to work with. Watch what happens when you use the weak answer. The officer now has a story to test. He asks which friend, what street, how long you were there, did you drink, did anyone else drink, why were you in that area, why are you coming from the opposite direction. Every answer becomes a rope you hand over. If one detail is off, the officer may call it deception. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because they know the state loves statements that look small in the moment but huge later. And yes, you still do the basic things the law requires. You give your license, registration, and insurance if asked. You follow lawful safety orders. You stay respectful. What you do not do is start telling your life story. This is 100% legal. You are not required to help build a case against yourself just because someone asked in a casual tone. The smart move is simple. Be polite. Be clear. Be done. Have you ever been asked this during a traffic stop? Drop a comment below and tell me if you knew you could answer that way. The second move is knowing the difference between required information and trap questions. This is where people get burned because they think every question from an officer must be answered. That is not true. In Hiibel versus Sixth Judicial District Court, the Supreme Court said a state can require your name during a valid stop if state law says so. But that same case did not say you must explain where you were, where you are going, who you were with, or what you were doing. Plain English. Your identity can be required. Your story usually is not. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. You can separate those two things in one calm sentence. You look at the officer and say this, Officer, here are my documents. I choose not to answer questions about my day. Those exact words are clean and easy. They show you are cooperating with the traffic part while refusing the phishing part. Former police officers have confirmed this works because it lowers the chance of a verbal fight. You are not acting wild. You are not refusing the basics. You are drawing a clear line. Bad way. Most drivers say, sure, no problem. I'm coming from the bar, but I only had 2 beers. Then the officer now has an admission and a reason to keep digging. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, here are my documents. I choose not to answer questions about my day." Then the officer has your required info, but not your extra evidence. A lot of drivers think they need to sound innocent. That urge is dangerous. When you try too hard, you start guessing. You start adding details nobody asked for. You start fixing your own story in real time. That is how tiny mistakes become big problems. Maybe you say you left at 10, then later say 10:30. Maybe you say you were alone, then mention a passenger you dropped off. Maybe you say you had nothing to drink, but your passenger says you had one beer at dinner. Now, the officer is not hearing normal human memory. He is hearing a story he thinks he can attack. So do not lie. Do not guess. Do not explain your whole night. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection. If you give only the required basics and refuse the rest, there is less to twist later. And if the officer pushes again, you repeat the same line. I choose not to answer questions about my day. Short. Calm. Boring. That is what you want. The safest answer is the one that gives the least away. The third move is what you do after the ticket work is done. This is where many stops should end, but they do not. The officer gives you a warning, hands back your documents, then slides into one more round. Where are you really coming from? Mind if I ask a few more questions? Mind if I take a look in the car? This is the moment you need your next line. You say, "Officer, am I free to leave?" Memorize that. 7 simple words, say them calmly. Why does that line matter so much? Because under Rodriguez versus United States, police cannot stretch a traffic stop longer than needed for the traffic job unless they have separate legal reasons. Plain English. The stop is for the stop. License check, registration, insurance, ticket, or warning. Safety stuff tied to that mission. Once that mission is done, they do not get extra time just to go fishing. Arizona versus Johnson says officers may ask unrelated questions only if those questions do not measurably extend the stop. Plain English again, they can chat if it does not add time. They cannot hold you there longer just hoping you slip. Bad way. Most drivers say, sure, I guess, and keep standing there talking. Then the stop keeps going and new consent requests show up. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, am I free to leave?" Then the officer must either let you go or make clear that you are still detained. This is 100% legal. You are not being rude. You are asking for status. Are you free to go or not? That matters. If the answer is yes, leave calmly. If the answer is no, do not argue the law on the roadside. You stay still. You say, "I want to remain silent," and then you stop talking again. Here's the reality. Many people stay trapped because they never ask the one question that forces clarity. They just stand there, nervous, filling the air with words. And words are where cases grow. Think you could stay this calm during a real stop? Let me know in the comments and keep watching because the next part ties all of this together. The fourth move is for the moment they order you out of the car or start pushing toward a search. Some drivers think that if they refuse to step out, they are protecting themselves. That can backfire fast. In Pennsylvania versus Mimms, the Supreme Court said an officer can order a driver out during a lawful stop. Plain English, you do not win that fight on the roadside. So your move is not physical resistance. Your move is verbal protection. Let me show you exactly how to handle it. You say, "I will step out and comply, but I do not consent to any searches." Then you do exactly what you said. You comply. You do not chat. You do not reach around. You do not give permission. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Why? What did I do? This is stupid. Go ahead and search. I have nothing to hide." Then the officer gets both agitation and consent. Good way. Smart drivers say, "I will step out and comply, but I do not consent to any searches." Then you follow the order while protecting your position. That sentence matters because courts look at consent. If you casually say, "Sure, go ahead," you just made the officer's job easier. If you clearly refuse consent, you preserve the argument that any search needs its own legal basis. And if they search anyway, your refusal may matter later in court. Watch what happens when a driver mixes compliance with clear refusal. The scene stays calmer, but the legal line stays firm. You are not escalating. You are not volunteering. You are making it clear that following an order does not mean agreeing to a search. That one difference can matter a lot later. Now tie these cases together in your head. Salinas means silence should be spoken clearly, not just acted out. Hiibel means you may have to identify yourself, but not tell your whole story. Rodriguez means the stop cannot keep growing forever just because the officer wants more time. Here's the reality. Each rule covers a different danger. One protects your words, one limits what can be demanded. One limits how long they can hold you there for side questions. If you understand those 3 rules, you stop reacting with panic and start moving with a plan. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings, but the street version is simple. Give the basics. Refuse optional questions. Ask if you are free to leave. If told to step out, comply without consenting to a search. That is the full map. Now picture the real stop. It is late. You see the lights. You pull over. Your heart is pounding. The officer walks up and asks for your license. You hand it over. Then he asks, "Where are you coming from tonight?" The wrong way starts fast. You smile nervously and say you are coming from dinner. He asks where. You name a place. He asks who you were with. You tell him your cousin. He asks if you had anything to drink. You say just one. Now he hears an admission. He smells something he thinks might be alcohol. He asks why your eyes look red. You start talking more because you want to sound honest. 5 minutes later, you are outside the car answering even more questions you never had to answer in the first place. Now the right way. Same stop, same question. Where are you coming from tonight? You keep your tone calm. You say, "Officer, I'm invoking my right to remain silent, and I don't want to answer questions." You hand over your documents. If he asks again, you say, "Officer, here are my documents. I choose not to answer questions about my day." He runs your information. He writes the warning. He hands back your license. Then he tries one more time. "Mind if I ask a few more things?" You say, "Officer, am I free to leave?" If he says yes, you leave. If he says step out, you say, "I will step out and comply, but I do not consent to any searches." That is the difference between a messy stop and a controlled stop. One path feeds the investigation. The other path starves it. Next video, I'm revealing what to say when cops claim they smell weed. Subscribe right now so you do not miss it, because that one catches drivers every single day. So remember the 4 big moves. First, clearly invoke your right to remain silent before your own words trap you. Second, give required documents, not your whole life story. Third, once the traffic work is done, ask if you are free to leave. Fourth, if ordered out, comply, but clearly refuse consent to any search. You do not need magic. You need a short script and a calm voice. That is powered during a stop. Hit subscribe so you catch the next video on the smell of weed claim. Smash like if this script just saved you from saying something costly. And drop a comment telling me which line you are going to memorize first. Stay safe out there.